I called the September meeting of the Equity Board to order at 6:10 p.m. And due to the hybrid format of today's meeting, I'd like to start by providing some guidelines. This is a reminder that the meeting is being recorded and that we have live Spanish interpretation happening in the background. We have participants attending in person and others who may be attending by computer or by phone. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. If applicable, mute your microphone when not speaking. If having technical issues, try joining the meeting using a different device like a smartphone or a tablet, or use the call-in information in the meeting invite to call into the meeting. And with that, we will begin by taking a roll call vote of the board members in attendance. Monica, could I ask for your help in doing a roll call?
Absolutely. Good evening, board members. This is Monica Negrilla, Human Services and staff liaison to the board. So for a roll call for the equity board members, I'm going to start with Helen. Helen's not present today. I have not heard from her. But I know that she has been unavailable in the last couple of months due to work. Next, we have Lorna.
Present.
Thank you. Welcome. Good evening. And Lucrecia.
Here.
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening.
Nima has an excused absence as he started school. He's unavailable tonight, but he hopes to make it to the October meeting. Ray?
Here. Good evening.
Welcome. Shay, I have talked to her. As you may recall, she had a baby a couple of months ago. She sent me some cute pictures. She and her are doing well, and the baby's about 2 months old now. And I think she was telling me that she was trying to get the baby into a nap time routine, especially with the older kids now starting school. So they're very, very cute and doing well. So Tony, welcome.
Thank you. Here. Good evening.
Christina. Good evening.
Present.
Buenas noches.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, welcome. Pretty.
Here. Good
Welcome.
evening.
Karthik.
Hello, everyone. I'm here.
Good evening, welcome. And
Thank you.
last but not least, Kelly. She's traveling. She's out of the country and she's not available tonight, but she will be back next time. That concludes the roll call. We have quorum.
Okay. And so the next topic of the agenda is public comments. And public comments are an important part of our public process, and we take them seriously and factor them into decisions we make. Monica, has anyone signed up for public comment today?
We have someone in the room. We have our regular friends from the Baha'is of Issaquah, and we would invite you if you would like. I know you know that you have an announcement.
Do you want to come over there? Or?
Yes, please. There's a chair there if you would like. Please. You're welcome.
Sorry.
Nobody bites, I promise.
No. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vafa Mostaqim. I'm from the Baha'is of Issaquah. I just want to remind you that we have our community social coming up in October 28th at 5 p.m. The place will be announced later, but just for right now, we are putting the preliminary things together. So I just want to be part of it. So today, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I guess I should check to see if anyone else has public comments on the Zoom or.
No one else is available online and no one else signed up for public comment. So very good.
Okay, great. Well, rolling right along, we're ready for the approval of minutes. So in your board packets at the table and in the board packet online, you will see meeting minutes for June 7th and July 5th. So I'd like to invite you all to take a couple of minutes to just quickly review the minutes if you haven't had a chance to do so. And then we will move to approve or amend once you have a chance to review.
I don't have a question right here. Just because this was a joint session with the other committees, I would just like to know how it went. I'm really upset that I didn't get to join. So we don't have those opportunities to be with other committees. Just some comments from those who are present. What stood out to you? Was there anything that we can absorb from an equity perspective that occurred at the meeting that stood out to you?
I think that's a great question, and I would propose we put it into the other business, so that way we can spend a little bit more time discussing it if you don't mind, Bryce.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, so just to wrap up the minutes portion of the agenda, wanting to see if, let's see. I have to go back to my script. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes for June?
I make the motion to approve the minutes as presented for June. This is Lucrecia Chotosky.
And Tony, I think.
Second, yes. Tony Curry, second.
Right. Let's see, I guess with that, the June minutes are approved,
Unless there's any discussion or edits.
unless anyone has discussion or edit. All right, okay, and then would anyone like to make a motion to approve the July minutes?
I make a motion.
This is Ray. I second.
Okay, great. And with that, would anyone like to amend or comment on the July minutes? Super. Okay, the minutes are approved. And then, let's see, we're ready to move into the meat of today's agenda. And that is a conversation about how to respond and when to respond, or the rules regarding responding to public comments. And then we have Tisha with the city clerk's office to let us know what we can do related to that.
Yes, of course. Sorry, I
Do you
do.
have a usual spot for presenters?
You're welcome here.
Thanks, it's here.
Okay.
Everybody's here.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. It's nice to see you again. Hi. So I'm Tisha Gieser, city clerk. I think I've met everybody here, and I'm here with you tonight because I understand there was some discussion and request by members to talk a little bit about how public comments can be addressed. And so I have a couple points to make. I don't have a visual presentation tonight, but I included a brief memo in your packet, and I'll be talking through that. So first of all, just an overview, just as you experienced tonight, you have adopted some rules for your meetings, and they specify that you have a public comment period at the beginning of the meeting, and then individuals get 5 minutes to talk to you about really anything that they like. I think one of the concerns brought up, which fully acknowledge, is that it can feel a little unnatural and formal when you have someone speaking to you passionately about a topic, and then you kind of just move on to the rest of the meeting. And so wanted to just share some things that may already be occurring here, but just some things that you can do to kind of soften that a little bit. So certainly you can acknowledge and thank them for their comments like you did this evening, and even provide, short overview of what you heard from the member of the public. This is probably something best done by the chair. Another nice thing to do, and that may not be possible in the moment, but if they were talking about something that isn't on tonight's agenda, it would be nice to be able to share with them, when the equity board might be discussing the issue that they came to you about. And that's something that you could, the chair could say, Monica, do you have any idea when this might be coming before? And if she doesn't, the staff could follow up with them to let them know, so that they could come at a meeting where the item they care about is being talked about. So I think giving them that next step is helpful. Look at my notes here. And then let's talk a little bit about some things that you can do to connect with individuals that's a little less formal than your public comment time at regular meetings. So your regular meetings are the time when you're working through your work plans. You have a number of agenda items, and time is important. And so they're not, the idea is that there should absolutely be an opportunity for the public to comment on those agenda items or any topic that they're interested in, but we also want to make sure that there's adequate time for you to get to the business of the meeting. Okay. And one more point to make here about your regular meetings and really any public comment is want to think about having consistent ways of handling them so that are fair to everyone. So someone comes impassioned about a topic that's coming before the equity board, taking time to respond to them at that moment might seem like a nice thing to do, but then that really should be how, any comment coming before you is handled, which is why generally at our board and commission meetings, we acknowledge the comment, thank them for the comment, tell them how they can be followed up with, but really that's probably best because it may not be possible to engage. They may be talking about something that isn't even on your work plan, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So it does feel a little one-sided, and let's just acknowledge that. Some options for having some more natural dialogue with community members could happen at a special meeting where the format is designed to be a dialogue or conversation, kind of like how the Human Services Commission, I'm trying to remember the name of the meetings, they call them listening sessions, and they were working on the formation of the equity board, and they hosted some community conversations.
Conversations, yes, for, yeah.
So Tisha, I saw a comment come up by the Spanish interpreters about slowing down. The conversation.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, community convenings or community conversations.
Yeah.
We hope those.
So that could be something the equity board could choose to do, twice a year as needed. You could do it just generally, just on any issues of equity. It is probably be more useful to have maybe particular topics that the conversations would focus on, but then you'd have a session that was really designed to be about that. Maybe it wouldn't be held here. Maybe it would be held in a larger space, or just could have some different elements to it. It could be an open house. Lots of possibilities there, but we would definitely encourage you to have those kinds of meetings where there can be that back and forth that's more natural. Another point about public comment, and this is probably intuitive, but I'll just say it, is that certainly as board members, you can choose to connect with members of the public outside of these meetings. If you feel, like you just want to give that extra attention to the feedback that they have. If you choose to meet someone for coffee or stay after a meeting and talk to them, you can ask them, you can share their comments back to the board, encourage them to send an email in. So those are some more natural ways to connect outside of these more formal regular meetings. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about when members of the public come to you, sort of what you can do. Sometimes the public will come and they'll have some questions about your agenda items. And again, it's not, at this point in time, I wouldn't encourage, I would say that though it feels a little awkward, there shouldn't necessarily be a response provided in that moment to their questions, but you can acknowledge that they were heard. And if you as a board member feel that those are questions that you would like to have answered, then you can be the voice when that agenda item comes up to say, I have the same questions, or I'd like to pose those questions. Then the person in the audience can benefit from hearing the answers. So that's something you're absolutely, slow down here, I talk fast. That's something you're absolutely empowered to do, is be the voice for that member of the public who posed those questions. So, and at times it could be appropriate to ask for staff follow-up, but so I wanted to say that. I also wanted to say that you may have members of the public who are coming to you with new concepts, something new that they think is important to the community. And what do you do with that, right? When they come to you and they talk about an emerging issue that's not something slated to come before the equity board. So as you know, your work plan items are coming from the city's strategic plan. They're coming from we now have a 2-year budget that we adopt. and then we have our mayor and city council who are setting policy. And based on all of that, that's how items flow down to you for your advisement. But if a member of the public brings up a new issue, there's a couple ways that you can handle that. I think it's helpful to think through a scenario. So let's say a member of the public comes to you and says, I think the location of the athletic fields in Issaquah are not adequately accessible to neighborhoods that have a lower socioeconomic status. I think the equity board should look into that. And Ray's thinking, that's a really good point. I've had the same thought, you know, you're compelled by that comment. So what you could do is under other business at that night's meeting or a future meeting, you could make a motion to add an item to a future agenda for the equity board to receive some initial information on the city's athletic fields. And you could, you know, maybe even request that the board be provided some socioeconomic information if available. And you would need a second, and then you would need a majority of the board to support that concept of adding that informational item onto the agenda. And you know, at that point, this is assuming there's not extensive research needed to provide you that initial information. So let's say there's not extensive research. It feels like something the Parks Director can share with you easily. So that next meeting, the Parks Director shares some information and you feel like as a board, this is an important issue. We want to forward this. So the appropriate action for you to take at that point would be to make a formal recommendation to the mayor to consider, you know, in your current year or future year, citywide work plan that some resources be allocated to more further look into the placement of the city's athletic fields. Are they even owned by the city? Are they private? There might be lots of different complexities to that issue. It's going to take some resources to flush those out, right? And other things the city will want to think about, like, is similar work already being done somewhere else? So at that point, your action would be to draft a letter or a motion that would be relayed to the mayor's office. And then and the chair could meet with the mayor to share some of the board's perspectives, and then sort of in her hands with what to do with that. So just wanted to share that. Very open to any comments or thoughts you have. One last thing on this is if at any point you wanted to modify how your public comment is taken at your regular meetings, you could consider adding a second public comment time later on your agenda. So members have the benefit of receiving information that you do during the meeting that might not have been included in your agenda packet. So that kind of looping back to my first point there, it is more formal at these meetings, but you have a few options. And let me know if you have any questions or thoughts.
I have a couple of questions, Tisha. Thank you for that. I think it's very helpful to be reminded of like what and how these comments are supposed to be processed and addressed. My first question is regarding community conversations. Do other boards and commissions use this process, and how often do they make themselves available to the community? And or do you have a recommendation as to how often we should hold those so that people feel like they have access to it?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts there. So we do have one of our very active commissions, our planning commission. They don't hold these informal conversations, but they hold more formal public hearings. That's required in our city code. But I guess the thing about them is that they're like, you know, a designated part of their agenda. And the city does some additional outreach to notify folks of those opportunities. Not quite what you're explaining, but we do have that happening on I'd say a monthly basis. Our other boards and commissions are often relying on community input the city is receiving through outreach we're doing sometimes before we come to the board or commission. So sometimes staff will have done a survey, some kind of an open house for a transportation project. They'll have had a meeting in a neighborhood, right? They'll have done some for a park project that might go to our park board. The park staff may have pitched a couple of park proposals and ask the community to vote on them. So a lot of times staff are bringing the outcome of community engagement to the policy board, the advisory board. So it is not very common that our boards have these more informal community conversations. I think since I've been working here, I think the Human Services Commission is the one that's coming to mind that's had the most frequent informal discussion. I think our environmental board may have done something along those lines, but it's not very common. But it's also something we're very happy to support. It's not, but it's not been pursued by many of the boards.
And then my second question is, let's see, with regards to the second comment time, I'm trying to understand how this would work, because part of what is difficult for us, in my opinion, right now, is that we don't have a time built in to have a discussion among us, right? So if something's brought up, we all kind of look at each other like, okay, that's important, but we don't know what to do with it. And then we just acknowledge it, move on, and then who knows what happens? I honestly don't know what happens, because
Right.
we never seem to loop back, right?
Right.
And so then my question is, if we do offer this second, what is it called? Second comment time, is there going to be a time in between the first comment and the second comment to actually have a discussion? Or I don't understand how that would be helpful, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it may not help that at all, that what you're
Right.
describing. I think as the chair mentioned earlier, that other business part of your agenda is kind of the open space. So if you have something, like that you're wanting to hear from your fellow board members or propose to your fellow board members, that's really the right time, the
Okay.
appropriate time in your meeting agenda.
And can we have discussion, right? Because I don't know what the rules are. Like, can we, because like I can see, like sometimes sometimes Lorna says something that I don't agree with, but there's no place for that, or vice versa. I'm just using, I'm comfortable using you as an example, but you know what I mean? And there is no place for us to have that discussion, right? So we all kind of look at each other and kind of give each other looks of like, what's happening? Right, now what? And then we move on. And so I want to know, when does that take place? And I also want to have a sort of like a backup plan, because what if we agitate our audience, right? And now they're like, I don't know, like it could turn into a free-for-all. So I guess I'm just asking for a little guidance as to like, how do we have our discussion? How do we address, or when do we address? And then go back to the community member who brought up the topic that got us discussing. And at the same time, not, create a situation where we lose control of the meeting.
Right.
So I guess, Monica, that leads me to ask, because sometimes I do feel like at meetings, we have things happen, like you just asked, how did the July meeting go? And that's something I'd love to have a discussion about. So should we be emailing you and saying, can you put half an hour for this item on the agenda? Should I have done that after the July 7th meeting so that we could, as a team, go into that? I think that's where I'm concerned, because it feels like our meetings, we already don't have enough time. So what does that mean for our meetings to get work done, but at the same time, respond to what community members or what we're experiencing in meetings?
So I think the best suggestion, just as it happened today, is try to just, if you have an idea that you'd like to discuss at the meeting, just suggest, can we add this to other business? And then under other business, let's say we are going to discuss then hopefully today how the meeting went in July. And then if you just share information about the meeting in July, let's say, and you all feel good, okay, I heard, I'm updated, I don't need anything else, then that's good. Then we had a discussion and no follow-up is needed. If, let's say, something comes up during that discussion and you feel like, this came up during that meeting and I would like to learn more about it, that's, again, then we would learn to say, okay, if you're all in agreement, as you have the majority and would like to have that, to propose that to a future agenda item, that's when we can just say, okay, let's add this to a future agenda item. And that's when we can discuss. We can look at what's coming up and say, okay, it may not be realistic that we'll do it next month, but we can add it to this month. But then that's where like you all need majority during that time to discuss and agree on an item. What's probably not working, and I'm glad Tisha's here if I understand the rules correctly, is we cannot have just one member emailing me or letting me know, Monica, let's add this to the agenda, or let's add this to the agenda, because then you don't have the entire board agreeing on that and having a consensus. Did I
That's right,
understand that?
because your time is valuable. You meet once a month. You have a lot of items coming to you, so that's exactly right. There needs to be at least a majority. Consensus is always nice to say, yes, this deserves our time.
Mhm.
One comment and one question. The comment is, I wish we got more questions like that came to the board, like the
Yeah.
example you gave, because we lack that kind of robust discussion often. We're so into our business. So that's my comment. My question is, is there an opportunity for us to become more visible? Like I'm staring out this window and I plan to go to that Issaquah Welcomes You event. And I would like to be able to have people know that this board even exists. So people can come up to me and if they have an equity question, then they feel comfortable coming to an equity board member and bringing it up. Then that's an opportunity for us to perhaps bring it forward to this group, right? So if it's things like that, maybe just answering that question that I have is wearing a name badge at events even allowed, that you're part of a board.
Yes.
Exists. Okay.
Please, yes. And so under staff reports, we'll talk a little bit more about welcoming week, but now you should all have a name badge. And yes, please, if you come on Friday, please wear it. And then we'll make an announcement where people can connect with you. That's great idea. Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, I actually had a question about that. Is it possible for you to introduce us at the event?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't see why not. We have also other board members and council members sometimes who are introduced. And
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. And I wish I had some more top of the mind suggestions for you. I mean, just a quick top of the mind thought is I know with our environmental board, there's been a lot of engagement with like the Issaquah High School students. That's been a great connection where there's, so your youth members might be a connector for a similar group, youth group that might tend to have a lot of ideas. What was another point? I wanted to make one comment about adding agenda items. Totally appropriate if there's support and time at the current meeting, like Ray did tonight, or as Monica said, for future meeting. The only time that it doesn't work is if you have a special meeting. We have a rule for special meetings under state law. You can't sort of add other topics. We have to provide advance notice of topics being discussed. So that's the one time where we need a limit. So, Lucretia, I'm trying to think if you had asked some questions earlier. I think so if you have items on your agenda, there should be discussion allowed within time parameters. I'm really hitting up against my time parameter right now. And then as Monica said, if there's a desire to continue the conversation, someone should say that. I have some more thoughts. I think this needs more of the board's time. Is there capacity for us to add this later tonight or at next month's agenda? And then I wanted to make one comment about the audience, wonderful members of the public, but it is important to remember this is the boards, you're the voices, you're the representatives of the community at these meetings. And so trying to minimize interactions, because I've seen where that can get a little out of hand and unruly. So that's where the chair's calm facilitation can help just remind folks that the board members are the ones who are speaking once you've moved out of that public comment period.
Okay.
Anything else?
So I have a comment. This is creepy. I was thinking about, I think back in May, we had a public comment around like vocabulary and how we're defining groups and talking about groups and things like that. And so I thought that was a pretty important public comment. And so one of the things I actually want to bring to the additional topics part of the agenda is seeing if there's interest in having a follow-up agenda topic to talk about that. And so that's one way I was thinking about. Yeah, that was a really good comment that I think probably stuck with many of us. And that's for an example. That's how I could see bringing that one back. I'm intrigued by the idea of maybe having some sort of listening session sometime maybe before we set up our next work plan for next year, so we can figure out, in addition to utilizing some of the community engagement that happens from the different departments, but also seeing what is bubbling up from community directly. So that's another possibility I think we could think about. And So maybe how we want to engage more. And I think, Ray, this has been a burning topic for you too, like how to engage and have meaningful dialogue with community in addition to ourselves representing community.
I'd like to add to what you were saying, Priti, that when I was on the Commission for Human Services, I found the community conversations to be probably the most robust information gathering way of getting information that we needed, right? Before that, I don't know that we really knew where we were headed to propose the equity board. And so I feel that if we are able to conduct the conversations, that we should really take advantage of that. Because it's the one way, you know, that I feel yields a lot of information.
Maybe we'll plan a future agenda topic around that. I wanted to check with folks on the Teams meeting with Karthik or Christina to see if they have any questions or comments.
Thank you. None at the moment. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments while we have Tisha here?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for
I wish you could be at every meeting.
Hey, what's that?
I said, I wish Tisha could be at every meeting so we could ask her all the questions.
Standing on that.
So in case the mic isn't picking it up, there's just a lot of appreciation for Tisha's participation and advice that was coming up here. So our next agenda topic is the draft policy on body worn cameras and overview of data tracked by the police department. And so we have Chief Schwan as well as Ryan Smith, the crime prevention analyst. Maybe the
Yes, of course. I'm shy too. We both might be a little shy. I brought gifts.
Oh.
Yeah,
Nice of you.
I'll leave some for Christina.
Thank you.
You know what, they actually have the little poppers. These are poppers in it, so like when yeah, for kids. So like when you get, I put them on my bag when I'm in the grocery store, I'll pop it because
Passing around this document here. It's a pamphlet we put out in our lobby for folks if they're interested in more information. These are on our website, reports, our blotter. Every week I put that out with information on our activities. So sorry. You already know where it is. Would you like one anyway?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What am I missing? Did I get everyone?
Thank you.
Hand it out. By the way, hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Smith. I'm the crime analyst, the new one here for the city of Issaquah, and I'm very happy to be of service.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Do you have our PowerPoint?
Yes.
So I printed off copies and that's what I passed out. There is the proposed policy. It's not 100% because that wouldn't make sense to bring you 100%. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to get your input on it. So the idea is for, we did a collective of multiple ones, but that's a little bit further down in the PowerPoint. So first, I just want to say thanks for having me back. I was here, I think, almost a year ago now, when I was the interim and now as the permanent chief. And we hired Ryan earlier in the year, and she's been very helpful in her tasks and what she does. And you're welcome to reach out to her at any point in time to get information for her, because she's the one that is the data. She helps our officers get the information, and if we know where crimes are happening in a certain area or the types of crimes, she can direct them and say, hey, they're seeing a mass amount in this area, and so we can know where to go versus just sitting in roaming different neighborhoods just because if there's crime happening more in one area. And she's on several different boards. She helps with and collaborates with other agencies. So we also see crime trends that are happening in other cities as well. She also she's on our board for the businesses. We have a retail business group as well that meets once a month. And did they move to quarterly?
They moved to quarterly.
Yep, they moved to quarterly. And so a lot of the businesses in the area are working a lot and collaborating, getting also more information. It's educational. So if someone's going to steal from one business, it's likely they're going to steal from another. So sharing those resources and that information as well. So first of all, one of the things is you guys, one of the goals is our goals is to have data and that includes using in combination with the community. We want to make sure we have and start those engagement and those conversations. A combination with engagement and conversation, not only with our front line, but with the people out there doing a lot of the work. And so we appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of those pieces. Some of the numbers don't always tell the whole story, and that's a big piece. Lived experiences of community members is also an essential element, and it forms the underpins and respect to the trust between local government, police, and community services. And the data is also shared publicly. And so that's what Ryan has passed around is we have, in case you weren't aware, we have a blotter that she puts out, which are different crimes that are happening regularly during each week. She puts something out and we do crime stats. This is the links to our crime stats that go within the community annually, and they do some comparisons to across the board to what's happening from neighborhoods to just in our community in Issaquah itself, comparatively to last year's. And in what we're seeing as far as trends go. And so if you have questions, if you say, oh, why did we have that many? Or if there's something that seems off, she brings it to my attention, or we look at that to make sure that they're reality versus just numbers that are being pushed out to you as well. And so there's some of the big pieces. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the whole point of reviewing this information is to really explore bias and privilege. To ensure services are equitable in all manners and that all people, regardless of background, feel a sense of safety and belonging. So you asked us about data, how our data looks, okay, particularly those relating to traffic stops, 911 calls and tickets when I was here last time. So we wanted to bring some follow-up data to get that back to you full circle as well. And so we want to also talk about the potential impacts of service to the communities of color and historically at margins. And these are things we also regularly review. Going too fast?
Yeah.
Going too fast. I'll slow down. I'm sorry. A lot of information, and so I'm just trying to also, based on your previous discussion with Tisha, one of my concerns immediately was I'm bringing this policy to you, which is 11 pages. Where are you going to have time to talk about this? And you only got it like less than 24 hours ago. So to me also, that is there a time after giving this to you today to be able to get a response back from you all and the board? Because if you're not given that opportunity, and so to be able to answer some questions. So that's another piece. And so I'll give you guys a moment to be able to read this a little bit as well, and let the interpreters catch up. And I'll talk slower.
Sorry, did I go too fast?
No, it's fine. There's different aspects. This is the aspects of bias and a race example. You can see from the chart. Do you want to speak to the chart, Ryan?
Sure, I can speak to the chart. So there are different aspects of biases that can change how our services affect the community, how they impact the community. You have explicit and implicit types of biases. Explicit biases are those that I'm going to call them, for lack of better words, the more obvious types. It's both in the institutional and individual examples here. It is very clear discrimination against other people. That's explicit. Others can see that. Implicit is the unintentional biases. And the thought is that the impacts of that will show up in the data. So here, for example, your individual implicit, you have unconscious attitudes and beliefs, right? So maybe a police officer calling for backup more often when stopping a person of color. Perhaps the department focusing on street level drug arrests instead of, factoring in, well, what's that community there look like? Is there, reasons that a certain group of people are clustering there together? And so that in aggregate would change the data. There'd be a disproportionality in the data. And so that's what we're looking for as some evidence of bias.
Thank you, Ryan. This is to basically show the impact for the community with the biases, implicit or explicit. And also, other examples are refusing to hire persons of color or an officer that may be using ethnic slurs. So those are other examples. Discrimination puts prejudice in action. And so we don't want those things to be happening. And so looking at these and focusing on street level, example of street level drug arrests. These are things that we must think deeply about to ensure equitable service and enforcement with our community. Next slide. Thank you. What our opportunities are for exploring institutional actions to interpret possible implicit or explicit biases? Where are there clues as that these may be occurring? And so obviously disproportionately the data are an indication, but this isn't always the full of it. And we want to get all the details in that information and not just be the numbers themselves. Details on the body cams and how we were looking at factoring equity into that policy is a big piece of this. For calls for 911, they're already recorded, but then after the fact is not right now in our community. And right now that's a piece. And the reason it's not is because we are one of the last communities to actually get body cams. And so it's pushed to the quarter. The council and the city administration has thought it necessary and put it that we will hopefully get its implementation to start in Q1 of 2024, meaning that once the policy is approved and it's got to go through multiple steps. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but we want to have that other side instead of it just being, so when people start to, if someone complains, let's say you have an interaction with an officer and you don't like how it was handled, then it's just your word against theirs, right? And so that's not in your favor or in theirs. And right now, and having body cams, it's very beneficial for everybody to be able to see the actuality of what actually took place in that interaction, to where you might interpret even that video differently than someone else, but it gives a more general and a descriptive of actually what took place. And so the policy doesn't even just talk about that recording, but it also talks about when you can use the recording and when you can't use a recording of it. It can be shut off and can't be shut off during interactions and all of those pieces. And those are very important for them to know when they can have private conversations, and it doesn't have to be on their body cam, right? Because they're human and they have other family things to discuss, right? Or when they go to the bathroom, I don't want to see that, sorry. But the reality is there needs to be guidelines on those things. And so that's a piece. And so the body cams, and why we're bringing it to you is because we want to make sure we're including all those pieces that we're thinking about, as well as how it affects the public. Because then every time you make contact, but then there has to be a disclaimer. If I pull you over for something, I have to say, by the way, you're being audio and video recorded. Just like the state troopers do, and they have for years. And they always have done that in many other agencies that have had those recording devices. But now, with a lot of the cases that have come to light in the last 2 years, that it's a lot more necessary and you get a full report. Now, thankfully, being a smaller agency, when stuff that's happening, there's patterns, we hear about it a lot more, and we'll be able to address that, but this will give definitive. And it also makes some of those investigations a lot quicker. So it's not you as a victim of being someone that had a certain circumstance happen. Do you not have someone or a recourse or a response in a timely manner where this would be much more timely, because literally we just pull the video up. And so we get an answer one way or another, and we go through the other steps. So it expedites those pieces as well. And so we also have to talk about redaction, because let's say I'm videotaping something going on with him and you're in the video. If you're a bystander or your child's in the video, they can't be in the video. So we have to have redaction processes and what that looks like. So no juveniles can be in there. People that are bystanders don't have to be in those videos unless they're a legitimate witness. So there's a lot of documentation and things that go into this that are necessary. And so that's the other reason we're putting these into action, and we're trying to protect not only just our staff, but the citizens as well. Because if there are things going on, that's an issue and we need to know about it.
And what if the person interacting with the police is the minor?
Then it has to go through, they can be, as long as it is used for like court. Like you can't just ask for a case reporting, including all juveniles or video. It's not allowed. There's certain laws put in place to protect those individuals.
Okay.
Now, if it goes to court, then that person can be in there, or there's certain guidelines if they're even protections, because even if they committed a crime, there's still a lot of protections in place.
Okay.
And so all of that still is relevant. So if like we show up at the skate park and there's tons of juveniles, or at a school and an assault's taken place, or any crime for that matter, and we're investigating it, we have to go through. But that's why we had to hire more record staff and other personnel, because it takes a lot. Now 3 officers are showing up, and now I have 3 sets of video, which is maybe a half hour long, that all of that video has to be redacted and gone through. There are some of those, because it's been in place for a while now, that the companies have automatic redaction with certain things, but there's that 2 to 3% that needs a human to go through and make sure that they're not on there.
Interesting. Thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
Do you have body cams on police officers at the police stations, or is it just when they leave the police station, or are there body cams also on police officers when people come in and interact with them at police stations, or when they're interacting, let's say, with someone that's been jailed, or someone, an interaction at the police station? I guess.
Excellent question. The question, everybody heard, the question is, do they have to have their body cams on? So if they're going to meet someone of the public, they wouldn't be on if it's just us sitting around the table and we're all cops. That's just not, they're not going to have them on. Because they're going to have conversations about their families and other things. They wouldn't be on. If they step out into the lobby, like they're responding to a citizen in the lobby, or they're even getting on a phone call that's to a citizen, and we call those 21. So you called in to report something and take a report. I would turn on they would potentially turn on the body cam. That's part of what the policy is. So I say potentially, because those pieces all have to be approved by everybody, including yourselves, for review. And it's 11 pages, so it's a lot of information. But yes, the guideline is that when you go to take a report of a victim or a suspect or any of the above, by the way, you're being audio and video recorded, and that would stay on for the duration. And part of that's written in there that they are not allowed to shut it off during that interaction. And so whether it's at the station, whether it be they're responding to a call elsewhere, if they're in uniform, they're to be wearing that, especially if they're responding to someone of the public. Even if it's you're just coming in to have an interaction, to bring cookies or fruit, or say thank you, that's still interaction. It would be the idea that it's being documented. So those interactions, no matter who they're with, those biases or whatever can still be out there. But there's also things in place. For example, this has the capability for me as a supervisor. Let's say there's a shooting, God forbid, we don't want another one, but let's say there is. I can log in remotely to any of the officers' body cams while I'm at my house. And it's not for oversight to be micromanaging or oversee the officers. It's so I can see real live and help make decisions and calls on the air, or to my staff saying, we need more staff, we need whatever. That's the intent and purpose of it, not to micromanage the officers. And those are only certain circumstances where I would be logging into something like that, would be a live in progress mass circumstance that was necessary to where they're going to be calling me in anyway, but I would be able to be viewing that.
I need to ask a follow-up question.
Sure.
You said that even when they're answering a phone call,
Mhm.
you turn it on, but are your calls not recorded?
No, if I call you from our like patrol cell phone, so if you call in and say, hey, I had this crime, this happened to me, I had something stolen out of my car, but I just need a phone call. Only 911 calls are always recorded. So when an officer calls you from a landline inside our station or from their cell phone, that's not automatically recorded. But with the body cams, that would give us that capability to do so. No. Yep, and then also if we use the language line for any reason, and there's an interpreter being used, we can say, and they can use that in court to say with that court, it's going to be recorded now. They can say, well, that interpreter said something, yeah, didn't translate correctly, or with what exactly the officer said, or they did, but it has multiple meanings. It's not necessarily that they did it wrong, it's that had multiple meanings and correct. So yes, that is that opportunity, yes.
So at the risk of delaying the presentation a little bit more, just I have a question around the purpose of the use of body cameras. Because I think I've heard different, like, what are the outcomes we're expecting? Is it to provide clearer evidence for crimes that have been perpetuated, or is it to actually prevent crimes because people may know that there's a camera? Okay.
It's not intended necessarily to prevent crimes because majority of staff are law enforcement are already wearing them.
Okay. And they're coming in after the crime has been committed, most likely.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is more for in progress. So for example, we had a crime that happened earlier today, and we have a bunch of people out with their video cameras, and that's their little snippet and their angle of what that report was and what took place. These also record up to 1 minute to 2 minutes back. So as I'm driving to the scene and I check that on, I get what happened a few minutes before. And so it's not preventative, it's to show that the actions were necessary. It's to show that if they were respectful, all of those extra pieces. That's the intent and purpose of it. To say, it may be an added benefit that it may prevent some crimes. But yes, this slide actually shows the studies on the body worn cams, the transparency and accountability for the officers themselves. And thanks for leading into my slide. That was great. Appreciate it. And so it's just critical for all sides. When we get the multiple camera angles, several different people, we saw one that we used for training was on a shooting in a different city and showed how an officer came up, his actions, what could he have done to prevent someone from trying to grab their gun. Several different things on things that could be delayed as a training purpose. So we can use it for training. We can use it to make sure. My recollection, if I have tunnel vision, if I see someone with a gun, if I can have a recollection and even look back, then my report's not false. It's what tunnel vision was, but then there's a reality of what that interaction was. Maybe I think if Monica's getting hostile with me, my interpretation is or I have a bias that she's getting hostile with me and my response may have been more aggressive than it needed to be. But I don't know that until I see that video and go, oh, wow, I can see maybe how that came about. And sometimes we don't know some of that. So it's educational for the officer themselves, changes that interaction. It's a change in interaction for the supervisor being able to give that feedback. It's also, if it's egregious, then it needs to be addressed in a different fashion. Then we have that opportunity for our officers to grow and be better. Or if someone does an amazing job and saved a life, we have that documentation to say, you know what, good thing that, kudos to you for, being there and handling things the way you did. So it's multifaceted. But again, it's also to make sure, because we have people, we've had, there's been, I've been here almost 6 years now. In the 6 years, then there's been a couple people who have made allegations that an officer has come up and only approached them because of their color, when they're just saying it was when the shopping cart was a big deal, right? When people were walking them back to the transit center and it wasn't okay. And from their own vehicle, they said, you need to take that, cart back. It's illegal for you to be having that and pushing it away. And they said that, they claim I'm an attorney. They can't approach me like that. I wasn't, no, you were doing something illegal. He didn't even get out of his car. But again, it's by your own admission, but I wasn't there. So all I can go off what his version of it was and what her version of it was. And this would make it very clear. And we asked the questions. Did they use profanity? Were they disrespectful in any way? Well, no, but they can't talk to me like that and tell me what I can and cannot do. This just gives that extra piece to go, well, wait a minute. And so again, jury of your peers or other people that would be reviewing can go, no, that was an okay contact, or no, that was over the line and that needs to be addressed differently. And then we see if there's a pattern of that. And then it can be something that doesn't get to the point of some of the cases that have happened in the last couple of years. And so, or even how they use force. Because let's say they work nights a lot or days, doesn't matter. And they're ones that seem to have use of force reports more than others. And us to go, okay, why is this officer? Is just because they're proactive, which is great because they're going out there, bless you, trying to find you know, people that are doing things and preventing them, and they just happen to get in find those people more, they dig up a little more, or are they someone that just rolls around the community? And if it happens to be they just dig up a little bit more, it doesn't mean their actions just because they have use of force. Or maybe it is, but these body cams will be able for us to say, yeah, they're a little more aggressive. We need to have some more defensive tactics, more de-escalation. We had an incident recently where a citizen came out of the store. We had a homeless person that had stole some food. 6 officers were there. The citizen was very upset that we had 6 officers there. Sometimes having 6 officers there is a de-escalation tool. And the cameras would show that, because if there's 6 officers, you may say, I'm not going to run because I'm not going anywhere. There's 6 officers here. So that's de-escalation in and of itself, to where the guy just goes, okay, and puts his hands behind his back, to where now I don't have to go hands-on and nobody gets hurt. Or the other was the likelihood of an officer or that individual getting hurt when that's not what we're there to do. So the presence of more people is not to be intimidating or that we're scared. It's also to make sure it's a de-escalated motion. And so that's what a lot of people don't understand, some of those pieces, and those cameras help that. And it gives a complete version versus all those people going, oh, here's my camera. Well, when did you turn it on? And did you get the stuff that happened before, or what they were saying? And so this gives that full, where you don't have that opportunity to turn it off either. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the intent is, we have to get the policy approved before we can do even the pilot program. What we'd like to do is we would like to get the pilot program moving and in effect. What this is a review of multiple other agencies, policies on body cameras, who's already been wearing them and already has them in effect. Before it can get approved, and you guys are the first group to go through this. Then once you guys have approval or comments and things we can look at and evaluate and to incorporate for the policy, the next steps is we have to send this to every one of our unions, and there's 5. Because everyone, even if you're, let's say, a dispatcher, officers will come in with body cams on. And so having some of those guidelines, or you might be recorded if you're riding in a car with one of them, or as a dispatcher, a lot of their conversations are already recorded. But if someone they're walking through the lobby, they know a body cam's being worn. So all the different unions have to take and sign off on this. I will say that almost all of them, well, from what I can remember, all of them are okay and on board with the body cameras. The one thing that there's question about is some of them didn't want to wear them if they didn't have to, which we already have tons of cameras in their area already from when they're doing their specific jobs. So doesn't mean we couldn't add them later, but as far as our correction staff, because there's cameras throughout the entire jail. And so they're on camera all the time as it is. So, but down the road, if we chose to or felt that was necessary or a good idea, that is something that could be added. But everybody else has been, and even their group, because they might be in contact, or if I'm arresting somebody and I go down to the jail, I'm going to be wearing my camera and it's going to be on. So you as a corrections officer will be on camera with your actions as well while I'm in the jail. And so those are conversations to be had with those groups, but they have to approve. There's one part that I know that's not in here that will likely be added, is there's no grace period right now. A grace period will likely be added. And what I mean by that is you'll see after reading the body cam policy that there are questions regarding whether or not, like when you turn it on, when you don't, you can be disciplined if you shut it off in the middle of an action, which is for good cause, right? The whole point is to get the full view. Well, the grace period is I'm not used to wearing this. And so if I accidentally don't turn it on when I get out of my car and I'm going to go hands-on with somebody or an immediate action, that a grace period for 30 to 60 days or however long, is deemed agreeable to the different unions and everybody, that's likely and is in all the other policies. That something's going to be needed because it's brand new. We also have to be able to incorporate that's training. Another thing that will have to happen before we add the policy and start the pilot program is a way to take, because we're going to get PRR requests, public disclosure requests. People are going to say, I want the video. Well, there's going to be a charge for it because it's a lot of money, time to redact a video just because you want to see and have fun and see what the cops were doing on this Friday night. It's a lot of video, a lot of redaction, a lot of information. And so because of that, there's going to be a fee. Well, We currently don't have a way of taking payment, and so it's another piece, because we don't take credit card payment. So that's in its works, but that's just another piece, right, on how that has to be done and what the price is for each one of those things. So we're looking at what other, cities do in that aspect, and then how we put that into, that's not part of the policy on what the fees are, but it is a piece. It is a big piece of how that works. And to create also the policy and how we implemented these, we had a whole team with all different divisions from people on our staff that went to different agencies that already have them. Like, what did you have to do for IT people? And did you have a cloud, or where do you store it? And how many people did you have to hire for public disclosure requests? And how many did they go up compared to what they were before? And just, we got all this data because there's no point in reinventing the wheel, right? If we're one of the last ones, there's tons of data out there. How do we best do this without reinventing the wheel, and problems that they came upon, how do we avoid those? And so we did our best to make sure that was implemented and taking place as well with our staff. So we talked about exploring bias and privilege through data. This is a lot of the tracking and the different lenses that we look through. There'll also be times with it that we will use information to where we'll do random checks, and that'll be part of having them. We do that on our messages because the officers do messages on their computers in their cars back and forth. We do regular monthly data audits to make sure they're having appropriate conversations, who they're talking to, that it's professional because it's a business computer. And so we do audits like that. Similar audits will be had on the body cams as well. Again, it's not to micromanage, it's just quality control. It's making sure our staff are doing the work that they should be doing, like you would if you're checking any reports in any of your lines of work. That's just what you do for quality control, and that helps with those. The data comes in, there's an incident report, in other words, a call for service, whether you walk in the lobby, Lorna, or whether someone calls on the phone or they call 911. That's how initial the reports comes in, front desk, calling the center, contacting an officer just by walking up to their car because they see him parked somewhere, or officer initiated, which would be like a traffic stop, seeing someone walking down the street. When I was working patrol, I'd see someone walking down the street. You can tell who's maybe business person and someone that's not a business person if it's 3 a.m. And I might walk up and park in a driveway, get out of my car and say, hey, how's it going? Why are you talking to me? I like to know who's in my city. How can I help you? You're out here at 3 a.m. I wasn't something I learned initially. I learned the gift of gab because I want to know and talk to them and get to know. Can I help you? Do you need services? What's going on? Would you mind giving me your name? They don't have to. They're not required to, but I can ask. And if they choose to, then we go from there. Well, hey, that's great. Do you need a ride somewhere? I have to know who you are to put you in my car, and I'm going to search you. You don't have to get in my car, and I don't have to give you a ride, but that is an option. But it's having those conversations. So those are officer initiated. And so you can make contact, but that's how we collect some of our data. Some of the questions that you guys had asked about, we do have the data. Can you go to that slide, please? Lots of different information here. There's also limitations, but we do take a lot of notes. And so responsible fielding calls, they're the ones that take our initial and send the officers to where they go. And they do a great job. They even sometimes circumvent, like say, do you need police or fire or medical? And say they transfer some of those calls out. We also dispatch for 3 different cities. So some of the data that we have, we do break it down because we also dispatch for Snoqualmie, North Bend right now. We do have some incomplete data from when we went up to Redmond. So we were just relocated for a short period in Redmond. So there's a period of about 3 months, September through December, where I guess 4 months, where we didn't have as much data. But here we do have several bits of information that Ryan was able to put together. The census of population, 40,000. This is what our breakdown is by, I think we have what's AIAN?
American Indian Alaskan Native.
Okay, thank you. I figured that's what it was, but I didn't know the exact acronym, so thank you. And so this is a breakdown of the population by ethnicity, by what's been reported the 2020 census, and a lot other information, median age, and so forth. If you guys are so inclined, Ryan has put together an amazing biannual year-end report. That had not been done before. We did a biannual and now we're going to do an annual. So this was done by in the beginning and then later on, and it's available on the website. And what this also, one of the pages that we didn't include here, but I wanted to give you is population in corrections. So like our staff, our people that are our residents, as I call them, our guests. We have a 72-bed jail in the basement of the city hall. And a lot of people don't realize that. And so 72 beds. And so with that, we do have on that census, and I can pass this around too, I did bring it for a view. It gives what the ethnicity is of the majority of people that were in there during the specific dates and times. And there's a lot of information in that. Again, it is available on the website if anybody wanted to view that. Over the last few years, Ryan broke that down a great deal, did a lot of work on that. And
Can I
so,
interrupt for a
yes.
second, though? I just want everyone to know that the jail contracts for services for 17
Yep.
different jurisdictions. So they're not all our
Correct.
bookings. They do come from other cities.
Is that because of, sorry,
No.
I have to ask this question later, but does that come from like overflow at maybe like Redmond, Bellevue, maybe their jails are overflowed?
They don't have jails.
They do not.
They do not have jails. That's why they book with us. They contract with us. And that's why we have a 72-bed jail, because we have people that come from Duval. We have people that book with us from Bothell. We have people that book with us because it's King County Jail, which is extremely expensive. Oh yeah. Extremely expensive. Merchant Island books with us. Federal Way books with us.
How do they get away with not providing beds to their own?
Jurisdiction.
Yeah,
They contract with a place to book them, and they book them in King County or SCORE or Kirkland or us.
because I'm imagining, when you've served your time or however you say that, now you're let out into Issaquah?
So here's the thing. So if you are someone that goes to court, like Federal Way, for example, you go to court, it's likely you could get out that day. You take everything with you, so you're not let out here. You're let out there. They come and get you and they take you back to your city, their city that they came from.
So you do court,
So
basically.
you go to court, and if the judge says you're released, then they let you out in Federal Way. You don't get automatically released into Issaquah. That's not how that works.
Okay, but if you are housed here, you're saying then you're taken back to Federal Way? Or
Correct, to go to court. They sometimes even have video court, but they have a transport team that literally comes, and that's part of the contract, is that we don't just release people out into our community unless they were booked for our jail.
I mean, it is dependent on the situation, but our court serves 4 or 5 different cities. And so, like Duval is one of them that we take. And so folks that are booked in from Duval, they'll go, we take them to court here, and then, they might be released or whatever the circumstances.
Yeah, they oftentimes do, because we do it so much since COVID. They do a multitude of video court now. So much of what we do is video court now. So they'll do video court with the judge in Duval from here, or they'll see our judge through video court in our jail. And then what they do is, if the judge says it, we also give free bus passes. So, which the bus station is right outside our door. If they're a homeless person, we still give go packs, as we call them, which have resources that we've got grants for. So they get socks, because that's the biggest thing people need is socks. We even have a clothing bank for people that have left clothing. We're one of the only jails that actually washes clothing. So if you're a homeless person and you come in, we actually do your laundry when you leave with clean clothes. They get water, granola bars, especially on a Friday. If we let you out, we want you to have resources, because you can't get to resources till Monday. So we do a lot of different things. But yeah, majority of the time though, this contract stays specifically like Federal Way as an example. They go to court. Even if they do video court here, the transport people take them back to Federal Way. We don't give them a bus ticket and let them out in our city. That's not how that works. Sometimes they want to be picked up by their own people, and they show up and pick them up here.
So I just want to do a quick time check, because we have about a little more than 10 minutes, and you're getting to the juiciest part of the slides with demographic data. So I want to make sure we get to all of that good stuff.
So, we have roughly 60,000 calls a year in our little center, dispatching for 3 different jurisdictions, and that's going to increase. And the reason that's going to increase is because in the past, it was that, you know, when you call 911 and you're in whatever tower it hits off, you get WSP or you get whatever other city you might ping off that tower. Well, now it's going to be literally, because technology has advanced so much, that if you're on I-90 in Issaquah, you will get us. You won't get State Patrol, or you won't get somewhere other tower, you will get us. If you're in Sammamish, you won't get us, you will get actually county, or we'll transfer you, but typically you're going to get the jurisdiction you're in now, because they are geographically being able to so much more advanced, and that's what they're moving to. So ours will likely increase because we won't have to be, you know, transferred from somewhere else. We'll get the ones that are actually in our city. So that will, and in the city, other cities that we actually, Snoqualmie, North Bend dispatch for as well.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question about the slide?
Mhm.
Is the number of 911 calls because of more trauma in the community, or it feels like since COVID 2020, our numbers have gone up 6% of increase of 911 calls from that time? That's what I'm reading,
Mhm.
the red line. So is it because of more trauma and more crime? What kind of calls? I mean, just wondering why we're seeing so much more 911 calls.
Part of it, honestly, is everybody through COVID had to stay at home. And so we didn't get near as much as far as out in the community. A lot of people stayed home more. The other reason is also we always talk about see something, say something. So that's been a real big push to where we ask them to call 911 when it's in progress. Well, some people are like, I'm not going to bother. I don't want to waste their time with this. Well, we're encouraging people to call more often. And so that's another big piece. There was a period towards the end of COVID where shoplifting just increased massively and property crimes. And we had been responding to that greatly. And so we were getting more calls for service that way, but that is also now decreased.
Okay, so are we going to expect that 911 calls? Are you thinking it's going to go back down in the next couple of years?
I can't answer that without getting more data. And the only reason I say that is because the new change with the 911s, that we're going to be getting more that are in our area specifically. Like if they're in on I-90, they're driving through our city and they call 911 because they see a reckless driver, that call will come to our center. So I'm anticipating it will go up a little bit, but I think it will also plateau. But we can also, that's why we have Ryan. She's going to monitor that, and we're going to get more information, and she'll push that out on the websites that we've also listed. And so we can get that data regularly too.
And we track that in the monthly report.
Yep. Yeah, in the 911 calls for service, we don't factor in the demographics. We don't ask those questions. You know, we don't ask their ethnicity in any way, shape, or form when they call. We ask their name and their contact number so we can get a hold of them again if we need to, if they're a witness or they're reporting something. They're allowed to remain anonymous if they need to and they choose to. So we don't ask those questions specifically when we get and respond and answer 911. And we were talking about this earlier as well, Ryan and I. It also can still be very questionable. And so, for example, if I pull you over, my interpretation, if you did not put on your driver's license, or if you don't have your driver's license with you, it's my interpretation of what race you are, or I put unknown. So I don't want to guess, or let's say you're of mixed race. And my interpretation is that you're one, but you identify as something different. And so your driver's license says something different. So it's going to be skewed a little bit regardless, because there's some things even in our use of force reports. If I don't know, I don't always ask your race. So if I don't know, I'll put unknown. Unless it's definitive and I can tell you're of a specific ethnicity or you're definitely Caucasian, I'm not going to put that in a report. I'll put that you're white, or I'll put that you're unknown is what I'll, or it's very, if you don't choose to put your race on your driver's license, or if you don't have your driver's license, I don't have a way to check that. And so if I do put something in the system, it's what my interpretation is of that, which can make a difference.
Where on the driver's license does it give you that option?
When you fill out your form. So when we run it, it's not on there, it's when I run you. It's when I run your name.
Got it. I don't remember that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so some of the indicators that are in here, and we may not get to all of them. Some of them are based on the officer perception of race ethnicity, and some of them are based on the information from them, the individuals themselves. It is aggregate, like the arrests. That is information based on the individuals themselves, how they identify, self-identification of their race ethnicity.
Can somebody being arrested or charged or whatever interaction with the police say, I request that you put my ethnicity as XYZ?
Yeah, they can do that.
And we ask you, we are like, if I'm doing a DUI report, I can ask you, what race do you identify as? And you can choose not to say a word. So it's in my interpretation, or I put unknown. And so you're going to get one of those two. So we have a whole slew in our database that's unknown because we don't guess. And some of the officers flat out just say, if I don't know and they don't want to give it to me, then I'm going to put unknown.
Right.
With exception to parking data, because a lot of times when a parking ticket comes through, the driver may not be in the vehicle. And so we don't know what their race
Or
is.
fire lane, handicapped, any of those as well. They're not required to give, we don't know the driver's not in the car.
Yeah, so. Just.
So this was one of the questions that was asked was about, traffic tickets and last time I was here and more importantly, warnings. This thing with the body cams right now, we don't specifically track the warnings people get as far as officers. What always that they're for, we don't always give that information when they say I'm out on traffic, they can say, oh, clear with a warning. They don't always run a name necessarily. They're not required to run a name. So we may not even have the race of the person that we made the traffic stop on. But when we've talked about it before, and we've had congresswomen and men ride with us, and the officers will say, let's have a check this. How many times have you been in the back of a car and you can't see the race of the person that's in front of you? Or you can't see across the way because of tinted windows, across an intersection. But I can see they don't have a front plate. I'm going to turn around. I'm going to stop that car. Doesn't mean I could tell what the race of the person was. And I could just say, I make contact with them and say, hey, you don't have a front plate. It's required by state law. If you have a driver's license, maybe they do check their name or they don't. But there's some of those things. And then the body cams can also, if someone says, oh, they only stopped me because of this, that body cam will show that wasn't the case. They couldn't even tell that. So that's more information and more data we'll be able to get, which is some of the questions you guys asked at the last time I was here, specifically on warnings. How many more warnings are given to different races? We don't really have that data right now. I'll be honest with you, we just don't, because we don't always put that in the call. I'm not always going to say, go back to my car and say, well, I let you off as a warning. Now I'm going to try and figure out what race you were to try and put that in the call so I can track that. That's not something that we do right now.
Interesting.
Excellent. So the last one was by gender. This one is by more about race. This is traffic tickets themselves. You can see, can you go back up one, please? You can see that the unknown, the green is like the second highest. It's because in some of the cases, because that's what the officers put. If we're not sure, a lot of the officers just flat out put unknown because they don't want to say it wrong either. And then someone get upset on a report because they put the wrong ethnicity.
By the way, IT is infractions, T is for traffic, C is citations, traffic, and then parking.
So the difference in traffic and infractions and citations. An infraction is like a speeding ticket, the parking is separate, but IT is a infraction like a red light, speeding, pedestrian violation. In other words, the pedestrian didn't cross the street all the way. Anything related to being an infraction, like I said, a red light, anything, basically a lot of the driving ones, unless it's criminal. The citation, the CT, means that it's a criminal charge. So the that's the difference in an infraction and a citation. Citation is a criminal charge, which means DUI, reckless driving, something you have to go to court for versus paying a fine. So that's the difference in the two, that it could be a misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor, which means a minimum of 3 months to a year is a misdemeanor, which is a citation. Anything beyond that would be felony and you wouldn't get a ticket for it. Then you'd have to have to go to court because it's a felony and you have to see a judge. So
For felony, would you be arrested?
majority, yes, but not every time.
Really?
Well,
Give me an example.
so let's say there's an example that I know for a fact that there was a DV that took place and maybe strangulation was a part of that. And you had left the scene. I will forward that to the court. Then if you turn yourself in later, yes, you will eventually be arrested. But the point is you're not going to get a piece of paper. Piece of paper you will get if you committed a crime for a citation or for an infraction. Felony, yes, you would go to jail, but if you're not there, I can't arrest you.
Got it, okay.
Or maybe it's a felony, there's other felonies that maybe you're in the hospital, so I'm not gonna take you to jail right away. So what happens, we either issue a warrant for your arrest, we either have someone sits on you, we have to check back because your injuries are so egregious that I can't make contact or take you to jail right now. Lots of different reasons that you wouldn't necessarily have a felony, but you still could be charged.
Got it.
Or it could be a lot more investigatory stuff has to take place to put the case together. And then a warrant goes out for your arrest because we've put the case together enough that now you can be charged as well. Again, that's not a piece of paper. You won't get a piece of paper for those. Next slide, thank you. These are by the types of arrests. By like you were talking about, whether they were taken in custody or the green. In other words, we actually physically said you're going to jail, or if there's a theft, we can go, here's a piece of paper instead. For whatever reason, like for example, we had a gentleman the other day. We put him in handcuffs. Technically, he's arrested, but we can cite and release. He had a bunch of open sores because he had a procedure or whatever. We don't want him in our jail, infecting anybody else or have a bunch of major medical. Might be a circumstance, but that's one luxury of having our own jail. Is other jurisdictions that maybe people live in, that you go to the grocery store and they stole something. They come to our city sometimes and they're like, oh, you're going to jail. And they're like, what? Where's my piece of paper? Nope, we have a jail. You're going to jail. So they think they can go to some other communities. And if they don't know there's a jail there, they don't realize that we are happy to take you to jail versus just giving you a piece of paper so you can go to the next store and just steal more stuff. So that's the very nice piece about having your own jail. That's one, well, that's one of the very nice pieces. There's multiple, but that is one for sure. Thank you. Here's the information by arrested sex. How many more slides do we have?
Well, there are 25 tools.
That's what I don't know what slide we're on.
Live after this. Oh, yeah, that's nearly that.
Okay, so let's go back.
Okay, this is where I am.
Nope, go forward, I mean. Because everybody has, yeah, the information was in their packet. Go ahead again. So here's one, these two I thought were important, and I thought you guys would want to, if there were any questions about these. These are hate crimes by the offender. So these are ones specifically. So these are, when it's a hate crime, it's an extra charge. So if a theft's committed, but it was based on, or property damage is committed, and like they put something, a racial slur on there, or a swastika or something like that, a vandalism takes place, those are hate crimes. If something happens and you're threatened and your race is specifically mentioned, or your gender, or any other type of demographic, that is a hate crime. And that's a different charge completely. And so we work and we document those differently because of not only the actual charge is more egregious and is higher than if it was just a vandalism in and of itself. So if we do have somebody, then those are considered hate crimes.
I have a question related to this.
Mhm.
So I know these are like more formal crimes that are documented, but you know, when I'm thinking about like name calling, racial slurs and things like that that might happen that don't rise to the level of a crime. Is there a way to understand if the frequency of those types of incidences are coming up versus the actual, like the ones that rise to a level of crime?
So we are encouraging, and we do, yes, track that, because I was just at the multicultural event in Bellevue, which had, and we were part of that, and I was one of the chiefs that spoke at that, and we highly encourage if, let's say you're at the mosque and somebody has freedom of speech and they're out on the sidewalk, but they're burning one of your flags representing you, or the slurs you're speaking of, we want to be called. We want documentation of that. There needs to be that information out there so we can see if there's a pattern. We can also connect people. There's also the Fusion Center that documents and tracks a lot of different people that have circumstances like that. There was some stickers being plastered all over the place that were like swastikas a couple years back. So yes, we want those things documented. We want to have knowledge of that, whether it be in the schools, whether we be here in the community, whether it be in your neighborhood. So we can prevent and we can have those conversations, because if it can be connected later on, then we have that documentation. But yes, we do encourage people still to let us know. It may not rise to the level of someone being charged, but that is important that it's still documented, because what if it does escalate to that? Then you need that documentation for sure.
So more than documentation, then do you keep statistics on those lower level types of events?
They're trackable.
So the thing is that they are underreported.
Yeah.
They are highly underreported, and that is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people may feel, for multiple reasons, maybe, they don't feel safe sharing the information, or they feel like, oh, well, who's going to care? It's not a crime, that sort of a thing. Well, it does matter. And we've seen an increase in that reporting recently, but the numbers are very, very low. I mean, just looking at our hate crimes. Now, that event actually that Chief mentioned, there are multiple cities there, and they all presented the same information. And I'm sorry, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'll just finish up really quick. We have some of the lowest numbers of reported hate crimes, but it's what's not reported that is concerning. And so we want to really push the community to engage with us. And we have a lot of work. I know that that's something that is one of the goals of the police department, to, really work on engagement with the community. And we're hoping that, this information sharing and partnership with your group will help to encourage more robust data reporting from people who feel safer to share their stories with us.
Because if they said it to one person, it's likely they've done it to another, and we want to stop that.
Yes.
And we want everybody in our community to feel safe, to be who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, my question is, at this welcome event, is there a booth for the police, or what is the involvement of the police at the welcome center?
Can it happen?
Yes, we do not have a booth currently.
Yeah.
We would love to.
But we will, yes, but we would love to, but we do plan on having people there.
Yeah.
So we will have the, duty officers that will walk through, but we don't have a specific booth currently. But it is something that can be
There is a
discussed.
city booth, but not specific police department, so we can certainly connect. There's two more days, we can definitely make it.
But I feel like that there's a difference between policing an event versus being available at a booth to answer questions.
Agreed.
Like, I would not go up to you as you're patrolling because I would be afraid. That's just me. But at a booth, right, like, oh, there's Ryan. She's actually not a police officer, but she has information that could be beneficial.
So we at Salmon Days, we do have a booth, and we give out all our fun toys. So it brings people in. We have little cars, paper cars, so the kids can make them, and they want to go, ooh, what's the fun stuff? But that helps them engage too, because I'm there in uniform, other officers are there in uniform. We want them to come engage and ask questions. Hey, I have this question. And so we do get a lot of those. So we do that at Salmon Days. We have the National Night Out that just happened. So yeah, that we had in August, first weekend in August, that was all about prevention. We want the people to engage and ask questions about how better and what they can report, and that information for sure. And we even offer a lot of our stuff is in multiple languages too. So we do coloring books that are in Spanish and in English. We get a lot of that stuff, and like I said, Salmon Days at the booth. I don't think I can get enough in 2 days, but I do have to make stuff out.
I was gonna say I could give my band back. but-
No, we haven't enough bands. I meant multi-language stuff, because it goes fast. I mean, our stuff goes very quickly, but yes.
It's really helpful. I'm not giving mine back.
You want to see if there's any other slides that they want to add questions on, or anybody?
I think the last slide was just, the next steps for us. There's one more, which you guys, I think, are probably pretty familiar with on what our next stages are. I'll just summarize it real quick. Sorry, I interrupted your speech here. But we would love to hear, and I especially would love to hear any questions you guys have. I will try to find the data for whatever it is, and if not, we'll have a discussion over why that is. I think it's important to get information out there to the public, to, those, so that we can create evidence-based decisions, and make changes in the community, the change we want to see. So, hopefully we'll get more, gather questions from you guys, and then we'll present the data bring it back to you guys, either formally or in an email. I think there are plans for a subcommittee, and then we'll, research what data mechanisms are in place elsewhere and what might work best here as best practices, what we can implement here, and then make recommendations for that policy, for actions for the city. So.
And if you guys have like another topic that's coming up, let's say your next meeting, and there's an area where there's some data that could be provided or helpful, if you get a hold of Ryan in advance, then we can give you some information that we're able, if we can be of any assistance on that we might have, and we can use that. And Dale also works with Ryan on a regular basis, so.
We are very fortunate at the city, I must say. I know both Ryan and Dale. They are the data queens, and yeah, we are very, very fortunate to have them.
I do have a question before we end. I noticed that there are a lot of unknowns, and I know you guys can give it to us because they're not putting it on the driver's license. But it's hard not having such higher numbers and I feel like in my experience, in my work, that has been complicated because we're not getting the full answer for it, because very often the two or more race, in my instance, it usually is two or more races, is a person of color and is appearing in a certain way. And it is one of the reasons why there might be implicit bias. But it's the way it falls, it doesn't get categorized in a certain way. And so it feels like it skews the numbers. And as two or more races is increasing, that number is increasing. It's also changing our results. And so it doesn't look as bad for certain other races. And so I am for me, myself, and just looking at numbers, I'm very curious as to what that unknown means. And while I get that the driver's license has it, because some people of mixed race, they don't know how to answer that question, honestly. So I get it. Like, the data collection is very complex, and identifying who you are, ethnicity wise can be complex, and the state questions are ridiculous and silly at most times. So how do we get better data? Because if our answer and if our data collection is to look at implicit bias, which is usually based on skin color and appearance, and yet we're saying this is unknown because they didn't mark a box, then the data is not complete. And the analysis is inaccurate because we're missing a big piece.
It only tells part of the story.
Yes.
I will say that there is a lot of data cleaning going on internally on our end. We also have a little bit of freedom to, restructure the data and work with the officers on training them and just having those discussions of, if you can get information, let's try to do that, because it only strengthens what we know about the community, that sort of a thing. So there is more work that needs to be done, and that's something that is actually presently being worked on by me in the department right now. And so I completely understand, because those are valid concerns. Only in some of them, especially with the tickets, do you see unknowns. Not everybody see that. In fact, with our jail, we have the option for two or more races, and to really tease out the different. And even for ethnicity, we'll pull out and look at, okay, do you identify as white and Hispanic, Black and Hispanic. I mean, because there are many different combinations. So, and that is not something that you see all the time elsewhere. So we're definitely working on, moving in the right direction. And we're very fortunate that we can do that with our jail.
It's easier in the jail than it is out in the community. And a lot of times it's easier for the jail and corrections because a lot more of the people that they are in contact with are either sober or more cooperative because they're caretakers instead of the people like the officers that brought them there. So that's another piece that's a little bit different because quite often, even if the next day they're not as mad as the officer that brought them in, that's their initial contact with them. And so that's sometimes we'll get the unknown, whereas when it's calmed down, sobered up, lots of different things, they've come to realization, they've got some assistance with some things, whatever, they're a little bit more cooperative and willing to give some of that answers. So sometimes then our answers, we might not have those answers, but maybe then the behavioral health people have a better opportunity to get those information and have better data than we did. And so hopefully maybe that's a way we can collaborate because they do come in contact with a lot of people as far as that we have in our jail, and that maybe they're able to get more of that data and then we can make sure we have that listed properly in our system.
Yes.
So that is one gap that we can help to bridge.
Because even two or more races sometimes doesn't give good data because Asian and white is very different when it comes to looking at bias sometimes versus let's say black and white based on percentage and all of that. So those two groups, yes, how you present and there's where the bias comes in, right? And so that's where I struggle even in data that I see in my work with two or more races because that number is going up and I'm like, yeah, but that means nothing to me.
Right.
So how do if I'm looking at bias and I'm doing bias training, how do I make meaning? And it's meaning making, right? Because we're trying to reduce implicit bias, but then numbers get hidden within our data.
100%. And then there's the other factor of, like you said, it's very difficult for people that are of two races
to identify.
They don't want to pick a side.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't want to pick a side. And then, because then how will they be viewed? Because they have their own bias about both too. And I have friends that are like, I don't know always what to say. And I have had friends that flat out said, depends on the group that I'm in front of, but it makes a difference. So it's very, I wish it was easier.
It's complex.
So I'm sensing a lot of energy from our group. So around that subcommittee item on the slide, when is that subcommittee going to form? So we can see about folks engaging.
Well, that's in process. We don't have a timeline set for that.
Okay.
But I know that was something on the books for this group.
So that's tied to our work plan.
For you, it's for your
That's
group.
fantastic.
I know you're looking at me and I'm like,
Okay, so we might want to get moving on that. I think a little bit more.
and we're open to different ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
If you find something in your work that you're able to come up with as far as solutions on that factor, we are open to figuring that out, seeing what our computer systems are able to do as far as provide for those things. Not just being two races, but literally what the options are of the races, especially in our jail, things like that too. So we're open to those different.
I don't have an answer. I was hoping y'all can because that's where I would like to look at data in my work.
So 3 quick questions, 1 on data and then 2 on body cam. So on the data side, you mentioned, Ryan, that, well, first of all, let me make a comment that I really like the slide that was on how hatred is being taken a look at as far as data. So it's nice to see that has gone down since 2018. I think there were 6 incidents in 2018, and then I think 0 starting in 2021 and from now on. But you mentioned that some things that aren't necessarily crimes are underreported. Is that anecdotal evidence or is that really just basically opinion, like feeling that it's underreported?
Well, a little bit of both.
Okay.
Honestly.
Okay.
We have had calls where people will mention that they've had experiences in the past and they didn't report it.
Mm.
Well, now, that's anecdotal.
Right,
but,
exactly.
But it could have become, actual data.
Right.
I also think that would be an underreported thing anyway.
Yeah.
Even from my own personal experience. I have had similar experiences in the past, you know, I'm actually of two races. I'm quite mixed, actually more than two races, but neither here nor there. Majority is two. Again, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Defining it.
I totally understand. My daughter's like that. Totally understand. I totally get it.
I don't like using labels, but you know, I didn't report them. And, you know, I think that, you know, especially, this is a larger conversation, it'll end up going down a crazy wormhole. So I don't want to go too far into it, but I do believe that, yes, there's a lot on the road.
Thank you for personally answering that question.
Did you have more questions?
I do.
Body cams, right?
Yes. So from a body cam perspective, Chief, how are your officers taking this? What are their thoughts?
They're all for it.
All of them?
I haven't had a single one that says they don't want it.
Really?
I have some officers that transferred from agencies that were experienced officers that had body cams, and they say in a heartbeat, because almost every time that someone made a complaint, they were either exonerated or it was brought to light. The version wasn't exactly how it was because people didn't know that it was all documented or on camera, or it was, but they were like, and either way, if I did something wrong, he goes, it's right there. And it just also being on administrative leave for an extended period of time and not really knowing and all this stuff, where this is just, it's right there and can be addressed immediately. So we haven't had anybody, the whole union is on board for it. They're like, yeah, because we brought it up already to say it's forthcoming that we're going to be getting these before we started our research. And we haven't had, of course, they want to see the policy for all the little pieces of it. But yeah, they're all for it. They're on board. They don't have anything to hide. They're like, yeah, no problem. We have a lot of good cops here.
That's good.
You know, and we're very blessed that way. We are, and it's not the case everywhere. And so we are very blessed as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's a huge blessing.
Yep.
Now, in terms of, let's say, the body cams, exactly, is it pretty much state mandated the manufacturer you have to use? It's not. So you have a choice of some of the newer ones where there's like maybe AI would actually have a camera turn on. If it hears something, let's say a gunshot, the officer forgot to turn it on. It hears a gunshot, boop, camera comes on, period. So you have some options to kind of take a look at some of those things.
We have the different technology. Axon's been the biggest one, and we did look at them, WatchGuard and several others. But Axon has been doing it for so long, as with a lot of those different circumstances that have happened in the last couple of years, then case laws that have taken place. And so they knew all the ins and outs. They have all the bells and whistles. They're on the forefront of all that technology. And so it's just a matter of what version you get, and we're pushing for that top version. And so, yeah, there is that option that you get to choose. There's no state mandate, and there's no any type of mandate that we even have to have them. It's just, it's better, and majority of agencies are using them. And if you're the only one that isn't, also people are like, what are you hiding? And we don't have anything to hide. It's just, it costs a lot of money. And so that's the bigger reason that it's been a little bit delay for our department, because it's expensive. It is very expensive to have every single one of those officers wearing cameras. But if it saves on one lawsuit too, it pays for itself in that one lawsuit.
Especially if
I have to get rid of one bad officer.
Right, especially if in some case where maybe from a technological standpoint, where the camera can recognize if I draw my baton or I draw my taser, and I forgot to turn it on, not because I'm trying to be a jerk or anything like that, or trying to be, being a bad guy. I just forgot to turn it on. So if I draw a weapon, whether it be less than lethal or a lethal weapon, camera will turn on no matter what.
Or you have to draw it because you're in a life situation. Someone's shooting at me, I just have to draw. I don't have to, wait a minute, let me find a camera.
Right, exactly, because I forgot,
Correct. Well, and that's why also there's a minute or two down the road where it is.
Yeah.
It tracks back a minute or two as well.
Now, what about another question. From a reporting standpoint. So let's say I report to you, I'm one of your officers, and I'm writing my report. I just don't remember stopping red. I don't remember exactly what occurred when I stopped red. And I want to look at that footage. I would be able to do so, but let's say, does it have what we used to call in the military nuclear approval to delete something? Meaning, let's say for whatever reason, no one can delete. Only you can, or you can't even delete.
No, they have to go through certain steps and circumstances for our records division or anybody to delete anything.
Okay.
They can redact, in other words, cover faces, or certain parts of something that is for a court case that is necessary, but that's still not deleted. It's just not released. But you can't delete unless it's like statute of limitations, a certain period of time. You'll have to hold on to those. And that way, the cloud was such a big deal when we had those questions. But nobody will have the ability to alter or delete any type of those. But yes, and there's also circumstances in the report that you can't look at it if it's certain types of cases. So if it's a traffic stop, as you're saying, and Ray was stopped, and I want to remember that, and it was a DUI, and which step specifically did he step off line with or whatever, I can look at that. If I'm in an officer involved shooting and you're not, you have to do your report first before you can look at the video. And then you can go back and say, in looking in and reviewing the video, because you have tunnel vision on what you saw, I want to know what you remember. I want to know what you saw and remember. So you have to do your report before you're allowed to see that. So there's certain circumstances that, and there are protections in place, and that's why those are put in place.
Thank you.
So we're running out of time, and I want to respect everyone's time. I know Karthik's got the last question, and then we'll jump into the next agenda item.
Thank you. Yeah, I know we're running out of time, but yeah, quick question, maybe a follow on from the last one was, are there recognition systems on these body cams, like face or speech recognition?
No, in fact, that's in the policy. It's addressed that way, that they are not allowed. I have to find the exact section, but there is specifically something in there on using the recognition unless under certain circumstances or approval. It was, it's specifically addressed in here. I can print that out specifically and where that's listed in there and send it to Monica. But I know because I'm the one that put all this in the draft mode. This is a draft. It even says draft on there at the bottom, just so everybody knows. But it is, it was addressed in there specifically about voice or facial recognition, because that we're just not there quite yet. So that, yeah, that is a piece that has not been implemented, and it is addressed as far as not being legally used.
Got it. Thank you.
So, Chief, what are the next steps in terms of time frame? When can they and how can board member get back with you if they go home and read in more details? Until when do they have time to get with you and provide comments? Should I just gather all the comments and then send them your way, or what's the process? How do you want to hear additional feedback?
Excellent question. I think it'd probably be easiest if they gave them to you and you collectively put them all to me. That might be the easiest way to go about that. I would say, it's the first part of September. We're trying to, like I said, implement the pilot program, but I want to be reasonable, I think is 2 weeks reasonable to have that information back to you. And so what we're looking for is not just, I want to know ideas in here on things that you have questions about that I can answer, but I also want, recommendations. I can't guarantee you that they'll go in there, but I want the recommendations and feedback, and I can show, yeah, that makes sense, or it's addressed in this section, or that's what this section is referring to. And I can give you that, and then because I want that information before I give it to the guilds, the unions, because that way I can say, this is what we presented. These are the pieces that the equity board also brought forth. And that way we can present that as a unified one group and form, instead of it being piecemealed or, oh, by the way, and then, oh yeah, we changed this. And I'd rather get your guys' input. That's why you guys were first.
Thank you so much.
And if there's if you have your question, feel free for Ryan or I, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer it. Give me a call, go to coffee.
Mine's really fast, actually. I just want to clarify, like, if someone experiences something that's not a crime, but they believe it's a racially motivated incident with a neighbor or whatever, they can call 911 and say, this has happened, and it will be recorded. Is that correct?
Yeah, 911's a recorded line regardless.
Okay, thank you.
And not only that, even if the dispatcher says we're not going to send somebody, or we're not going to have somebody call you, typically we do, and we want it to be documented. So we'll put your name and information, if you want to give it, and or the neighbor and or their information, if you have it, to know that there's been that altercation, because God forbid something happens to you the next day or a week down the road or a month down the road, and it's found some sort of racial motivation, but we have that documentation that something happened, it's for your protection. It's no different than if there's domestic violence situation that's happened in a relationship and there's no documentation of it. If it wasn't reported or written down, it never happened. And so we want that. We want people to know, like you said, there's a neighbor goes, oh yeah, can you believe that happened? I just can't believe I saw that. You need to report that. So encourage the people that you know and are around that don't say, yeah, that's terrible. I can't believe they did that. No, you can even call for them as a witness to say, I want it to be known. They may not want to be a victim. They may not call you themselves, but you need to know this took place. And I heard this racial slurs that happened, or this derogatory comment toward their gender, or whatever that is. So 100%.
Thank you, because I really believe that up until now, am I wrong in saying this? Up until now, this is the first time I've heard that this is actually something that's collected and that we should be reporting. Like, I feel like previous, it was like, well, where does it get collected? And we didn't know where it got collected.
Yeah, no, if you call 911, it's on a recorded line, and that's saved. And then what happens is it's specifically saved for a certain period of time. But if you know that it took place and the officer did, they can also go back and put that recording attached to the report. They also document, even if it's just an information report, the point is there was racial information that went on, and that is told to be reported by all our officers.
And it could just be an information report. I go through and read every single case. It takes a long time, but I read every single case every week to make sure that we're not missing anything. And so whether or not the officers are able to, go after everything, I'm looking for patterns to see, is there something going on, even behaviorally, in an area? And is there something we can do? And maybe it isn't something that the police department themselves can handle. It might be a larger societal thing. But until it's documented and we have those conversations, nothing's going to happen.
Well, and just so you know, even though you report it 911, it's recorded, they're going to type in exactly what you said on that call. So she can also go in and just list at the calls. So let's say the officer didn't write a report even. It's still in the calls, everything you said and reported, and it's recorded on 911. So she can review the call notes, because dispatchers type in what you're saying no matter what. So a call is created, whether the dispatch or the officer makes a report or not. Your information is still put in there that what you said is being reported and it's sent. Especially if it's a racially motivated statement, threat, anything like that.
Or anything. Religiously motivated.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime. But yes, to read through every single
Thank
one.
you. Thank you for taking the time.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Sorry we went over.
So,
Those are
thank
important
you. Yeah, thank you so much to Sean and Ryan for your providing data and update and giving us an opportunity to review the body worn camera policy. We'll individually send feedback and questions to Monica within 2 weeks.
And that's on the body cam. If anybody has any other questions, you guys weren't here in person, but if you guys have any questions or you're in the city, always happy to meet with people. Shoot me an email, call me on the phone. Always available.
Yeah. Perfect. Don't be strangers.
And one of the things that I always get reminded when we go to visit is that officers are always interested in ride-along. So if you're ever interested in riding along, I think that's still available, right? Because here, your officers or that, if that's not, I'm sorry.
No, so the ride-along, yes, you can, because you're on the equity board. So you need to don't just call and say, hey, I want to go on a ride-along. Because it's either someone that's applied for a job with us, or because you're on the city's equity board, you're welcome to, because you're considered part of the community as far as the staff and you're our group. And so, yes, so we have you fill out something, because we can't, not that you would be on the board if you had all this extensive background, but we do have to have you fill out the forms. We do it for our council and for everybody else. So we do the ride along form and we send you an email. If you call, you can connect with me or whoever. Maximum we do is 4 hours. You can do them night or day. We just have to have staff to do it. Sometimes if they're training, there's already 2 in the car, you don't want to ride in the back, I promise you.
No.
We will let you out, but that's probably not your best option. So, but yes, you can ride along. You're more than welcome to do that in our community, and see what we do.
Yes, but no.
Okay, well, thank you both and for sharing the learner. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief.
Want to check on with folks, do we have an extra 10, 15 minutes to wrap up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, then passing it over to Monica for a staff report.
Okay,
Can we
thank you
leave
so
it
much.
first?
Thanks again. I think we have each of us, so.
Do you wanna, should I bring them next time? What about for those two? They're not here.
Oh, no, or I can keep them and also give away so we'll all put them.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think keeping it very brief for staff report, I just wanted to talk with all of you a little bit about Welcoming Week. So we are excited. Friday, it's Welcoming Week. We will come to the front here. It's from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. right here behind me on the lawn at the community center.
Will it be all outside? I thought.
It's gonna be all outside. The weather is cooperating. Yes, we had plans if needed to transition indoor, but it's all outdoor.
So it's still 8 o'clock, and 8 o'clock is
8 o'clock now.
fairly dark. So are there gonna be lights on for?
We hope so. There will be lights on.
Bringing more light. Like, how big does my font need to be if people are reading it in this light?
Clean up will be a challenge afterwards, but we are looking for, yes, please spread the word, please bring friends, please come. And also if you have time and availability, we would love if anyone is interested in volunteering. I can send up the link to sign up. There are a lot of different volunteer opportunities, including setup and breakdown. Setup starts at 1, 2 p.m. You can come and start at 4 p.m. You can just start and come to the event as equity board members. If you would like to wear your badge, we'll make sure that we'll introduce you. We do have a city booth. And so then you have the opportunity to be there and meet with the public there, or just as you walk around, if you have your name tag on. Each year we have now a tradition, Welcoming Week. I was reflecting a little bit on the cultural events that we've been doing for the last couple of years. Welcoming Week is the one that is now building tradition and has been organized for the longest time. I've been here with the city for 5 years, and when I came, that's when Welcoming Week was already happening in the community at a smaller scale, with partnering with the library. So it was happening at the library, and so when I came here, then we brought it in at city facilities for the first time. So we are now in the 5th year. We had to cancel it once during COVID, but as it's growing in popularity and as we build tradition, we hope to make it bigger and better each year. So please join, please consider volunteering. There are going to be, of course, food, a lot of great music, dances. There's even going to be an African show this time, which is new compared to previous years. There's going to be a lot of ton more activities for children, including bouncy house. So it should be fun for all ages. And we have a long list of organizations that are going to be participating at the resource fair. We have almost 40 organizations participating and city departments. So
That's really cool.
so should be fun.
And is there a fee for organizations to get a booth?
No, all free.
Mhm.
We do not. Yes, it's
That's great.
about welcoming and including everyone.
Yeah,
The only
well,
thing
you
that we
never
do not
know.
offer
I
for
mean,
free,
you never know.
it's the food trucks, but there will be some free food as well. So not, yeah, but yes.
Yeah, I've participated in the past with the setup and I think maybe even the takedown. And I want to encourage people, if you're able to do it, simply because you are able to communicate with people on a very equal basis, right? So you're not seen just as like an official or something like that, right? You're seen as like someone who can roll up your sleeves and pick up a chair or whatever it is that they're needing. And I just find that that's a very genuine way to get to know the community. Mhm.
Thank you so much, Lorna, for that. Yes, very, very humbled. We have a great team who's been, a large team actually, who's been working on this. Not only city staff, we do have quite a few departments at the city. In addition to our human services department, we have now the economic development department also joined in our parks and community services department in recreation. Tisha Geezer is one of the main staff also participating in that. And that's just city. We also have the Downtown Issaquah Association, the library is also a faithful partner for many years. And then now the Friends of Library Foundation, and then we have the Issaquah Highlands. So we have organizations, community groups, organizations who are all part of this. So it's growing in, and yeah, so it's very, very good. So hopefully we'll see you all there. Please.
I have a table.
You have a table, yes. With
We
the
participated at least 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
And what is your table, Lorna? Oh, the school district. Okay, I thought you meant something else.
It's got her own table going on.
Yeah, I was like, oh, what do you
It's like, come meet
represent?
me. I'm on it.
It's because I work in cultural family partnership, and so it
Yes.
is the cultural family partnerships and the welcoming.
And the Schools Foundation also is a big partner for sure. Yes, thank you, Lorna. Sorry, I didn't mean to miss it. I need to put the right one on this. Yeah. And now I'm wondering about lights, but I know that we have some lanterns that are going up for decorations. I just don't know if those have lights.
So you don't have like big, like stadium lights that shine down, no? Okay.
2 days, we'll figure it out. If not.
That's why I'm turning myself on.
That's what I imagined when you said you had lights. That's what I was
Well,
imagining.
we don't have cell phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was wondering, I'm like, wait, it's outside, do I need to bring my lanterns?
Yes, bring the
Bring them.
lanterns, bring them.
Just to be safe. Okay, enough. Thank you.
Okay. So the other business and announcements. So I was tracking on a couple of items. So one, Ray wanted a brief update on the joint session from July, I think, Lorna, you were there? July 7th, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
July 5th, yes, June 7th, July.
Yes.
Okay, so I, do you have any takeaways to share, Lorna, from that, or Monica?
Well, I was wondering what the conversation with other boards has been regarding definitions and what is equity. Because I know that has come up quite a bit with our people coming to our meetings, and it came up again with this commission. And that meeting, there was many questions I walked away with when it came to discussing what is equity versus equality.
Yes.
And misunderstanding of what equity means. And it felt like I did not, like, we should not be going in and explaining what we do and defining equity for different boards or commissions. And so my question is, are the different boards and commissions been given a basic understanding of equity, implicit bias, the need? Because it felt like this was a given that we were talking about equity with the committee, and yet it kept on going to equality.
Correct.
And so I was confused as to my role and the conversation. So I left the meeting feeling like we had not finished the conversation, and that there was definitely disagreement within the group as to equity versus equality and what was the purpose of that. That was my impression, Preeti. You can correct me since you were sitting at that meeting. Lucretia, you were at the meeting too,
Yeah,
right?
Christina.
And Christina. So it made me very much question what was going on, and it didn't feel like I was there to have a conversation with them. It felt as if having a conversation, telling them what equity was.
Oh, interesting.
And so please say something. So you
Yeah,
can-
no, I mean, I think we're all nodding because, yeah, I mean, it was a bit frustrating. I mean, I can say that I attended as virtually, and so I didn't feel like I could just jump in. But yes, if I look back at, when I looked at like who spoke and whatnot, I do remember there were a couple of times when it was like, why are we at this step rather than addressing policy or addressing
Yeah.
things that matter.
I'll add, like, it was a reminder, it raised the question in my head, because I thought that, well, boards and commissioners were either, they were invited to attend equity trainings, virtual trainings, because I remember attending one. And so I don't know how widespread that participation was, but that was a reminder to me that it maybe either boards and commissions need a refresher on equity training, or
Or
maybe
maybe
some
it's-
folks
It
never
needs
got
to be
it.
mandatory.
Yes.
Because thank you for reminding me about that, because I forgot the fact that we were invited. And I know I attended a training with Shannon, right? But now I'm wondering if everyone also received that training, because it felt that the conversation went back to that. And it felt like if the commission was really, to me, they were really pushing on equality. And so I wonder why I was there with equity. Like, am I supposed to convince them that equity is needed here? I thought I was here to partner with them and say, how can we have equity in our economic development of the city? And so it just made me leave questioning the conversation and what was happening at that meeting and with that group.
I guess Lucretia or Christina, do you have any other things to share?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember. I remember a couple of questions like that, and I don't know how, if it's a common confusion among the commission or whether it was kind of specific to a couple of members.
And that's true too, because that could be, because I thought I was there to talk about how to increase the possibility of bringing more
Yeah.
underrepresented businesses to light and to, to help groups that might not know, and how to do more education. And it felt like I was told, no, this is about bringing equal systems to everyone. And like, oh, I'm not here for that conversation.
So they won't understand. They were in the framework of everyone has a boot,
Yes.
Correct.
but not everyone has feet. So they weren't getting that.
I feel like that emerged from a couple of the questions that came up. I don't know if I heard that from the staff members who were.
No, and that's true. So the city staff members definitely have that opinion. It was the
Boards and commissions.
commission.
And that's
Some
why,
members.
as a staff member, board members, couple of notes, I think at minimum, this is good information for you, right? Like, all the boards and commissions are volunteer community member representing the community, right?
Right.
And so I think at minimum, this is good information that you have. And then now I think the next question is like, what do you do with the information, right? And I heard a couple of these suggestions already, like, okay, maybe we can propose to the city that instead of just inviting or strongly inviting, then maybe it can be made mandatory. And that's probably a conversation to have with Stephanie, the HR director, next time she's here, and what are the options. And I also know Bailey's here also internally having conversations at the city, like, how do you mandate certain things to a person who's volunteering their time, but also like, what's the baseline of training and expectation that you want to have from boards and commissioners. So again, at minimum, this is good information.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
And I'm glad that it's surfacing instead of making the assumption that,
Everybody's trained.
yeah.
Yeah, so I feel that, yes, it's true that we are volunteers and whatnot, right? Like, that's a given, but we also make a commitment in terms of like what we're signing up for. So it may be hard to say to someone, you must do this now, but moving forward, it can be written in such a way that when you sign up to be considered for a position, whether it be on a board or whether it be on the commission, that you're agreeing like, hey, you're going to come on board and part of your commitment is this training, right? That it's just not negotiable.
Actually, I was thinking more on the line of, we had to interview to be on this board. And so if the board is indicating that they don't believe in equity, because I know this is a debate in our community, that some people have literally said they don't believe in equity. Maybe this is something that that's part of the interview process. Like, what are your thoughts around equity? So it's not that you're coming in with training, because nowadays, honestly, many people have more training than some of us in this room around equity. So it's not, for me, it's not a thing about getting mandatory trained, but it's a thing about, as you're coming into this role, part of the expectation of the city and the belief of the city is that this is who we are as a city. So we're looking at putting people on the board that is a representation of who we are, right? And so I think I'm looking for more than just training. I'm looking at the interview process, because coming in, I need to know if you have that value.
Live
Yes.
into and embody
The
certain
values of the
The
city.
salmon values, maybe
Yes.
equity, which needs to become a part of the salmon community or something.
Well, I think we're still, as an equity board, still trying to define what our mission is. And I'm hoping we're going to get to more of that where we're very clear on what we're trying to accomplish in 2024. But what I was hoping that this Vitality Commission would have some commentary about, I actually need to read their commission. What's their goals and objectives, and how do we align to it? Are you fearing that your business is going to close this year because of an equity situation? It's stuff like that. What is your primary concern? But if you have to go back to defining what equity is, they wouldn't be able to answer that.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think they just we need to know what their goals are, and is there truly an alignment with what we're trying to do, and how can we support one another?
So I believe they, as part of the opening agenda topic, it was like we had an equity board presentation, and there was an economic vitality commission presentation. So there's some of that information in the agenda materials. So on paper, everything reads, I think, well. Yeah, it's a matter of living into it. And I think I will say, to some of Lauren's comments and stuff, some of what I would like to explore is for the city to become more mature in terms of articulating what its values are around equity, and even, the readiness to go into an equity strategic planning process or something. As part of future work, what it would entail to define things a little bit more fully. And I think that would support staff and how they do their work, and give more of that definition for expectations of board and commission members and things like that.
Thank you.
So I think, Tony, did you help?
No.
Okay. So related to the other topic, because I think it's a good segue into it, was one of the public comments from a couple months ago around what words are we using to define. I think that's also part of setting a good foundation for the city, is common language, common, where do we get started? Where are we centering our work on? I think it came up with the equity framework, there's 20, 30 different types of, groups that have experienced being marginalized or oppressed. And, that's a lot to operationalize in work. So I'm just kind of thinking about how we can start to bring more clarity by what kind of language we use. And I know there's dictionaries around equity and inclusion and things like that. So maybe, I'm thinking similar to the calendar, around, but is there a dictionary or list of terms that we can help
We all agree.
to provide, clarity in how we communicate about this? Because the more the city goes into the journey, the more nuanced vocabulary needs to be.
I think that's an excellent idea because that came up at our meeting and I was asked to define equity because there was a misunderstanding between equity and equality. I would love to see that on the city's website to define implicit bias, explicit bias, marginalized, underrepresented community, equity versus equality, and then with the mission statement to have the definition of terminology within it, because I know that in my work, when we introduced it wasn't a policy, it was a government. But a lot of the people reading it didn't understand a lot of the words being used to talk about it, because it is new, it is very new. And the word equity, when we started doing this work, people were very confused because our country is built on equality. It's not built on equity.
Right.
And that is very hard for people to wrap their head around, because even as a child, I was raised in my mom and dad are going to love me equally. And yet as an adult, I realized that they loved me with equity because they gave me certain privileges or certain things that my siblings did not get. And so that is equity. They didn't force me to do something that I didn't want to do just because my sisters did it. But I was recognized who I am, and that's how we treat our children. So I think we need to, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. And to some people, it still feels very unfair. And so I think giving a why and maybe rate that ties into our work. And we do need to maybe as a group take time to sit down and work with the city about that, because I think we're going to run into more roadblocks along that till we define that better for people and the community and the why.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe we, at least for me, I know what my definitions are, but I cannot assume everybody else does.
I like that personal, because that really drives your thinking too. When you can have a story to tell, how you define it.
I mean, in a perfect world, it'd be great if we actually had some type of, when we're talking about our open forum discussions, if we were to have something like if we could make this happen in October, November would be out, December would be out, but an open forum discussion about equity. Kind of like when we first all got together, that was one of our first conversations about like, what's the difference between equity and equality? And I think that picture that kind of has the three individuals in a box, that would be great to actually have on the City of Issaquah website to just kind of help people who don't understand equity just from a visualization standpoint. Like I think about that a lot when I started first learning about equity and equality, and just learning what the differences is and how that, like I think about that picture a lot. And I kind of showed that to my children as well. Children hate equity. They hate it. They hate it. They don't think they want equal. So it's like from an implementation standpoint, anyone whose equity is implemented upon, they want equality. But it's those of us who want equity, and it's just helping them understand that that's the betterment for society. And so, I mean, what are your thoughts, Monica, in putting that picture, something like that, even if it's just, it would be great. Let's say if it's on the city website and then just engaging citizens, what are your thoughts on equity and equality on the city website? And people can just comment what their thoughts are on looking at that picture, because it does help represent visually what the difference is.
I think there are lots of opportunities to add more information to the city's website, and including, I think, a glossary and, of terms. And I think those are things that if you as a board would like to kind of like take as next steps for us to put it on future agenda items to, for staff, for us to do some research and bring back ideas and then take action as a board. I think that those are there are lots of options too. Of course, work with our communications and see and all of that, but I think the city is very open, and so anything that would make it easier for the community and for staff and provide resources, I think then that's the least we could do. And also a very easy way to make, I think we were talking a little bit with like, it's probably a low effort, big impact on sharing information that's already available and curated out, right?
So then in terms of process, do we need to like make a decision, like the collective decision, so we put it on a future agenda topic?
I think so. That would be the next step. I was gonna just ask you, okay, so we talked about 2, 3 different things. So what are next steps as a board? What would you want to have? Like, would you like to have then an agenda item or to talk about common language and I don't know, what page resources as well as separately, would you like to, not that I want to go back, but we didn't have a next step for the training or other ideas that you had around other boards and commissions? Feels like that's perhaps a slightly different topic, or would you like
Maybe
them lumped
bigger.
into or a bigger, right, conversation? That could be maybe as one of the conversations with Stephanie in the future meetings. But at least, yes, we can have at least one future agenda topic to talk about common language and
Yeah.
and web page resources, website resources.
Yeah.
Depending on how it works, October might be too soon, just because I know your agenda is filling up. You have the comprehensive plan conversation coming to you, and then you have some equity framework implementation, some outreach. So there are some topics, and that might be a little.
A big friend has entered the room.
How big?
It's a friendly.
Yeah.
Mosquitoes, we like that bug.
My recommendation is maybe an October meeting, we take 10-15 minutes to come up with common words that we'd like to add to the list, and then sometime in October, whoever's interested meet and say these are definitions that we'd like to propose and agree, disagree.
Thank you for that. Even better if you find it easier. Pretty and I have been in conversation last week, and Pretty shared with us, there's some work that some other agencies have done. There's some fairly good start, I think, that the University of Washington, there's a list that they put together. I'm happy to share it out to the board. That could be like, you can review it and say, hey, this is a good start. Let's add this and this and that. And so then we can definitely have a conversation in October for 10, like we have at least a starting point. And then again, if we have time in October to have a 10-minute conversation to continue, if not, we can again just put it as an agenda item for November probably, or December, and then have a lengthier conversation on what else to add.
Yeah, and I think the skip around that might be like glossary of terms, but also words to avoid using.
Kind of like the
What not to use in addition to what to use.
I would also like to revisit what Ray had talked about, the community, a couple of you have talked about. I feel like when I first joined this group, it was to have some community discussions. And I would love to see that happen, maybe in lieu of, in addition. And I know that October is filling up, November and December, always a bad time to ask and do these kinds of conversations. So I'm wondering if a great way to start the new year is by saying, hey, we want to get your voices as we go into our new year. And let's have one of these listening sessions and giving people time. Because the listening sessions really have to be well thought of in who we invite so that people actually show up. And also we have to consider, are we doing it all in English and all of that part? So it can get very complex, but since we're 9 of us, maybe we divide and conquer between different language groups and different listening sessions, but
Sessions.
yeah. And so I want to make sure that is coming on our agenda. So that's why I'm bringing it up, because I know I have to bring it up. So we all agree to put it on our agenda session. I learned one thing today. So my proposal is we put it on the agenda to talk more in October so that it can be planned for January is my suggestion.
Practice by January.
Yes.
So I love the idea of doing a listening session to help inform a work plan. So that way there's like, you have a session, you're taking that information and you're directly putting it into action in some way. So I think, well, I feel like our word-driven work plan did not make much progress this year. So we also have to think about how to manage our time and agenda topics so we can actually work not only on the stuff we're being directed to advise on, but also the stuff that we're initiating. So what is the right amount of work across those things? It's 8:30, so I don't want to keep us too much longer, but I feel like now we've got a pretty nice backlog of agenda topics.
Can I ask, are we just emailing feedback to you?
And the bottom of the agenda policy. Okay, any parting comments from the group, announcements? From anyone? Okay, going back to my script. What are the words to wrap us up? Here it is. Okay, the next meeting is currently scheduled for October 4th, 2023. And this meeting is adjourned at 8:34 p.m. Have a lovely evening, and thank you all for staying longer. Appreciate that conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Nice to see you, Karthik and Christina. Bye.
Thank you.